Hello friends, Norville Baggins here, everyone's favorite hobbit from Coolsville in the Shire. And today I wanted to talk about a writing concept known as show don't tell, and specifically how I think that the opening scene of the first episode of The Mandalorian, how I think it's a really great example of this concept. Now, for those of you who have ever taken a creative writing course in the past, you're probably familiar with show don't tell. It's a very popular thing that teachers and professors talk about. But for those who don't know, show don't tell is basically the idea that rather than asserting something for the reader to accept, your writing should transmit something for the reader to experience. Now, what does that mean, right? Basically, it's when you're telling a story, it's easy to kind of explain exactly maybe what a character is thinking, exactly what is happening in an instance. And that's fine, but we don't necessarily want to do that. What we want to do as writers is kind of involve the reader in the scene and setting up the prose to really capture that, you know? So, okay, that might be more confusing than the actual the definition itself. So let me give a couple examples here to kind of drive home this point. So let's take two kind of writing examples. The snake raised its head, baring its fangs and hissing. Freddy froze on the spot, terrified. Okay, now I just threw that together in a couple of minutes, so not necessarily the greatest passage. But okay, so what do we know kind of from this example? We have a character, Freddy. He's facing down a snake. The snake hissed at him, and he's terrified. He can't move. He's stuck. Okay, you know that kind of tells us what we need to know. But we can do a little more than this. We can do a little better. All right, let's take this second example here. The snake raised its head, baring its fangs and hissing. Freddy's palms began to sweat, the thumping of his heart only growing faster. The smart thing to do would have been to run, but something kept him locked on the snake, unable to break free of its dark gaze. Okay, again, threw that together really quickly, so not necessarily the best piece of writing ever created or anything. But see how this passage differs from the first one, right? In the first passage, we were told that there was a snake and then that Freddy froze because he was terrified. But in the second one, there's a little more description there. You know, we're not necessarily outright told that Freddy was terrified, but from the way we're describing kind of how he is, his palms are beginning to sweat, his heart's beating faster. He wants to run, but he can't. You know, he's just kind of locked on that snake's gaze. We're kind of brought into how he feels, and we get the sense from that, oh, well, he's terrified. He's afraid of snakes. You know, he doesn't know what to do in this moment. You see how that's a little more rewarding? You know, instead of kind of being told what's going on, the reader's kind of brought into the situation, into the character's feelings, and really that can really kind of be the make or break of how good, you know, a given story is. Again, this isn't a hard fast rule. You know, sometimes there's a time and a place to kind of just lay things out in the prose and not necessarily have to describe or kind of insinuate different things. But to strike that healthy balance and to really know when to kind of be a little less heavy-handed about it, that can really kind of be the difference between a good story or an okay story and a great story. Okay, so The Mandalorian. How does this relate back to The Mandalorian, right? Like I said in the beginning, I really think that the opening introduction, when we're kind of first shown the character of The Mandalorian, I think it's a very good example of this concept in action. So in order to kind of drive this point home, I want to take a look at two individual scenes from this episode. Both are kind of within the first 10 minutes. Both are about around a minute long. And as we go through each, I just want you to kind of take a look at what we come to know about the character without necessarily having to be explicitly told that, right? Because that's kind of the core of what we're looking at here. Okay, so the first clip I want to show, this is basically the opening 3 minutes of the episode, right? So the episode opens on this ice planet. We have this armor-clad guy. This is our titular Mandalorian, and he seems to be walking towards some sort of building. He's got this blinking fob-looking thing in his hand. Looks like he's tracking somebody. So the scene cuts to inside. What we see is now that it's a bar, and inside this bar, there's three guys. We'll call them Baldy, Squidface, and Beanie. And these three guys, they're kind of like rough and tumble ruffian types. They're hassling this blue alien guy. The alien's known as a Mithril. And while they're, looking to kind of cut this guy up, I guess that, his glands and his musk or whatever, they sell well on the black market or something like that. The door opens and we see Mando standing in the doorway. Now, watch what happens next.
Jacta gratu! Ubahasa miokala. Achuta Mando. Gispi Ubahasa miokala.
He says you spilled his drink. That's fine. It's on me.
Salary Beskar.
Here.
And that's it. That's kind of the end of this really well done opening scene. Okay, so let's bring it back to the topic at hand here, right? Show, don't tell. So if we go back to the definition that we gave earlier, show, don't tell means that rather than asserting something for the reader to accept, your writing transmits something for the reader to experience, right? Okay, so I mean, in this case, we're dealing with, screenwriting with what we're seeing on screen, not necessarily what's been written or that we're reading. But the concept still applies. So let's kind of take a look at what we've come to learn about The Mandalorian, and let's evaluate how naturally this information's come to us. So when we start off, we see the Mandalorian kind of show up in the door, and immediately everybody goes silent and everybody's staring at him. That shows very clearly that this is somebody who, when they show up in a room, everyone's interested in them. You have the three ruffians. They try to kind of talk to him. Baldy tries shouting at him, accuses him of spilling their drink, which she had nothing to do with. Shouts, hey, Mando, it shoots on Mando. But the Mandalorian pays no attention to any of this. He doesn't even turn his head or anything. He's just walking towards the bar. He's focused on his mission. That shows that he's dedicated, that he's here for a job and nothing is going to get in his way. He doesn't suffer fools. He's not interested in kind of the common rabble who might get in his way. He's here for just the job, and that's it. So the ruffians, again, they're undeterred. Baldy walks up to him. They're done with the mithril for now. They walk up and surround Mando. And then Baldy mentions, is that Beskar steel? He sees the armor that he's wearing. Is that real Beskar? And, tries cutting it with the knife. You see that it leaves a little scratch, which I actually never noticed this the first couple of times I watched this, that it actually did leave a scratch on there. And then that plays right into what happens next. The bartender slides another drink down for Baldy. But Mando grabs it as it's sliding down the bar, and then he's able to use it to handily take out all three of these guys. And the ensuing fight scene, which is very brief, Mando doesn't really take any major hits other than one blaster bolt, which reflects right off his Beskar armor, which is a very effective way to show us the fact that Beskar, that it's basically laser-proof, which is something that's going to become very relevant later on. Beskar is a huge kind of core part of this series. And we also see some of the other gadgets that the Mandalorian has that he can bring down to bear. We see him use the grappling hook to pull in the squid face, the Quarren. And, after getting shot, he then pulls out his own blaster. But instead of returning fire, we see him use a bit of his brutal ingenuity in that he shoots the door controls, which then bisects squid face. Is it cold? Yes. But for somebody like the Mandalorian, who we see is a professional who doesn't suffer fools and wants to make sure he can get his job done, doesn't want people to mess with him, it's a very effective way to kind of drive that message home to the rest of the people in that bar. Hey, look, if anyone else is thinking of messing with me, don't, or this could be you also. So for those of you who might not have been too familiar with Show Don't Tell kind of coming into this video, I hope you kind of start to see what we're talking about here, how, you could take a scene and how we can kind of glean things from it, as opposed to the characters maybe just expositing all that information on us about how professional the Mandalorian is, or how effective he is at fighting, or how good his weapons are, or how he's always quiet and, is no nonsense. We've seen all that. So now we really have a good sense of who this character is. And remember, he hasn't said a word yet. In this whole series up until this point, again, we're only like 3 minutes in, we haven't heard a single word come out of his mouth. And I think that plays really well into this concept and kind of how it plays out here. Now, I want to show one more scene from the same episode. It takes place maybe like 5 minutes or so after this scene that I think really shows a different side of Show Don't Tell that you might look at and say, wait a second, this is a character telling us things about the world, about this character. Why does this count? Why isn't this kind of something you shouldn't do? Well, we'll see. So this scene takes place, like I said, maybe like 5 minutes later. The Mandalorian, we find out he's here for the blue guy, the Mithril, and now they're on their way back to Navarro. The Mithril's in custody, and they're on their way back to the Bounty Hunters Guild to trade in the Mithril for the reward.
I like your ship. She's a classic. Razor Crest, am I right? Pre-Empire? I have a lot of credits, by the way. That's why I offered to hail a cruiser. How much are they paying you? Is it true that you guys never take off your helmets?
Okay, so this is another really good scene. It's very quick. You only have one character who actually says anything, yet we learn again even more kind of about the character of the Mandalorian. So it starts off, you have the Mithril. He's in binders, sitting kind of in the back of the cockpit, and he's trying to kind of strike up small talk. We've already seen that's kind of who he is. He tries to talk his way out of things, and he's trying to strike up small talk with the Mandalorian. Your ship, it's a Razor Crest. It's a classic, pre-Empire. But again, the Mandalorian is not he's not taking any of this, he's not looking to have a conversation. So then the Mithril continues, I have a lot of credits, by the way. There was a moment earlier in this episode where he tried to kind of say, hey, I'll buy a yacht for us, to kind of go back to wherever we're going. But again, this is another insinuation that, oh, hey, I can pay you if you just let me go. Again, Mandalorian doesn't engage with it. So at this point, the Mithril is just balls to the wall, like, look, how much are they paying you? Again, insinuation. I'll pay you more than they're going to pay you, and we'll say, we're even. But Mandalorian doesn't have it. And then he tries to strike up small talk about like him as a Mandalorian, like, hey, is it true you guys never take your helmets off? A piece of information that's going to become very, very important kind of later as the series goes on. So basically between this segment and the last segment that we watch, let's just think about all the things that we learned about this character. We've kind of been talking about them as we've gone. He's quiet. He's no nonsense. He's a professional. He's not easily bribed. He's got a job to do and he's here to do it. All these things we've learned about this character, and it's all been kind of conveyed to us either through actions or through kind of other characters, kind of talking to him. And I think that's kind of really what the essence of Show Don't Tell is. Like, think about it this way. If you took away the fact that this is a TV show on Disney Plus, that there was a director who directed these scenes, that these are actors who are playing characters, that there was a script that was written here, feels like it's a very believable episode to have happened in the Star Wars world. And that, again, that's the essence of Show Don't Tell. We as viewers can kind of enter into have a window on a world that's not our own, and we can learn things about that world as if we're in the real world, learning things about the people kind of around us, and that's it. That at its core is Show Don't Tell. Now, to kind of drive this point home even more, I kind of want to give a bit of a counterexample, kind of a bit of an example of something that's very heavy on the tell, don't show. This example is the Marvel movie Thor: Love and Thunder, which came out, I think, in 2022. Now, Thor Love and Thunder is definitely not one of my favorite of the Marvel movies. I was a huge Thor Ragnarok fan, but Thor Love and Thunder I think just kind of takes the kind of the silly tone of Thor Ragnarok, which, was definitely more silly than some of the other movies, some of the other Thor movies, but at the same time still took itself seriously enough to be an enjoyable film. Whereas Thor Love and Thunder does not at all take itself seriously. And it is very painfully clear that they wanted to kind of have Ragnarok to a million with the jokes. And because of that, the writing and just kind of the believability, again, it's a superhero movie, but just because that's true, it still needs to be believable in the context of the world. And it just, because of this, it just fails. And I kind of want to focus in on one of the opening scenes. We have kind of a pre-Marvel title sequence where we're introduced to the main villain, Gore. But after the kind of the Marvel logo, we're introduced to the introduction of Thor and kind of where he's been, where he's going, and where he comes from, as narrated by Korg.
No.
I'm sorry to have to subject you to this, but you really have to kind of experience a little bit of this to kind of really get a feel for what we're doing here.
Come, gather round and listen to the legend of the Space Viking. Raised in the way of the warrior, Thor was taught to help win battles, fighting the good fight for those who can't fight good. He grew, and he grew, and he grew. He was sensitive like a smile, and his loving nature did not discriminate. He once loved a swashbuckling passionista. Another time, he loved a wolf woman on a woman wolf.
What the is happening right now?
But Thor's one true love was an earth woman named Jane Fonda. Oh, wait, no. Jane Foster. But sadly, in the battle for love, Thor lost. Ooh.
So, okay. Yeah, so that's kind of the intro to Thor Love and Thunder. There's a lot here, It's, kind of starts off, this is Thor, and he was trained to be a warrior, and he was a passionate lover at one time who loved a blue-haired woman and a wolf lady, and on top of a lady wolf for some reason. I guess that's funny.
Is he though?
But then there's Jane Foster, who wasn't in Ragnarok, but she was in some of the other Thor movies, who he loved, but then they broke up. And then we talk about how Thor lost so much that he loved, like his mother and his friends, who Taika Waititi refuses to acknowledge who these characters are, and Heimdall, and Loki several times, and then even Asgard. And, then after that, he became sad, and then he teamed up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they went on adventures, and he was fat for a bit. Now he's not fat anymore because he trained. And, now he's just kind of sad on the inside, but tries to help out in battles when everyone always asks him to fight for him and things like that.
Thor, we need your help to win this battle.
Thor, we need your help to win this battle.
And then that's kind of where we get to the first scene. And that's a lot of information that we're all kind of, we're told all of these things, And look, I get what they're trying to do here. It's supposed to be like a silly little story that as they display it, Korg's telling the kind of the blue children from this planet that they're fighting on. But, be that as it may, it still feels so unnatural. We learned so many things about this character. Some things we didn't even know about a character that if you've seen all the other Thor in the Marvel movies, it's a character that yet now we're kind of introduced to all these new things. Oh, he was this passionate lover. I mean, yeah, like it's clear he always kind of, did well with the ladies or whatnot. But kind of like this free loving swashbuckling hero thing that they're trying to portray, that's kind of new, and we know that him and Jane broke up, but some of the specifics there, are still kind of fuzzy even after the introduction here. We still don't know a lot of that, And, then we're told about all the adventures he'd on with the Guardians, which I can't help but think of might have made a better movie than this. But yeah, then we get to the end, right? And they're at this battle that the Guardians want him to help out with. And that's kind of where we're left off. Okay, so show don't tell, right? Let's go back to that definition again. Rather than asserting something for the reader to accept, your writing transmits something for the reader to experience. We've just learned a whole lot of information about Thor. Have we experienced any of it? Sure, there were clips, there were little like scenes and stuff that we saw. But as viewers, we haven't really been given the opportunity to really experience it. Really kind of see the character in action, wrestling with these things. And that's kind of what we need to really get invested in the character. Like, sure, if you've seen Marvel movies, Thor, so you may be invested in Thor to some degree. But, first of all, there's new things now that we need to know about him, like how much he loves, and he's hurting because he lost Jane, hurting because he lost everybody else. And, he's more fit than he was, I guess, at the end of Endgame. But he's hurting on the inside. Okay, that's fair enough. Those are things about the character since we last saw him that we should know. But for those who have never seen a Thor movie before, we're trying to be introduced to this character now. But again, there's ways to do that without needing to tell you specifically what you need to know. And again, I know this is supposed to be like a narrated story that he's telling to these kids, but the things that we're told are like such intimate things about Thor's character that I don't believe Korg would know, as even somebody who knew Thor closely. If Thor's really being so closed off about this, which later in the movie we're kind of shown that he's keeping things inside, and the Guardians, him and Quill kind of talk about it. Why does Korg know these things? And if Korg does know, is Korg trying to help him work through these things? It doesn't seem like he is, So that tells me, that that's just the writers telling us what we need to know through the character of Korg. That's Taika Waititi telling us through his character, what needs to be established for this movie. Like, think back to The Mandalorian, right? When I was talking about how these things that were shown, if you take away the fact that this is a fictional story that's being told by a team of writers, a specific director, producers, for a movie or a show, if you take all that away, you strip that back, it feels like the Mandalorian feels like a believable instance, of something that's going on in this world. Whereas this scene doesn't feel that way, It's trying to be a thing that's happening in this world, but it feels too much like, hey audience, this is what you need to know for this movie. And it's just not conveyed in a very natural way. They try to couch it in the whole story that Korg's telling, the narration, that's funny. But it just falls flat, Like, not to be melodramatic about it, but I can't help but feel like we're kind of being treated as viewers like we're not intelligent enough in this instance to figure these things out on our own, that we need to be told, hey, Thor's sad. This is why he's sad. This is why he misses Jane. This is why he's depressed and kind of in this weird mood throughout the first part of the movie, as opposed to just showing us that, just showing him reluctantly part of this battle, that's raging, or why he's struggling so much later on when it comes to helping, his friends, and he wants to kind of go off and do his own thing, even when the Guardians are going off to a different place, So anyway, I guess to kind of wrap it up, this video is starting to run a bit long. Show don't tell, I think, is a very critical piece that a writer has in their tool belt to really help us engage with their characters, And, we've seen two different examples here. The Mandalorian, which I think does that very well. It establishes the world. It makes us feel like we're part of that world, and then starts unraveling this character, this, strange, soft-spoken, mysterious kind of character, as the series goes on. Whereas in Thor: Love and Thunder, we're just kind of thrown into it and told, this is the character. This is what we need to know about him. This. All right, good luck. You're about to go on a wild, unfunny ride for the next 2 hours. Have fun. But anyway, Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video was informative for you. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So please don't hesitate to drop a comment down below. I'd love to check them out and see what you guys are saying. If you enjoyed this video and are interested in seeing more from us, we'd appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. We have a lot of cool ideas we're excited to come out with over the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that. And as always, I'm Norville Baggins, and I hope you have a wonderful day.